Illumination isn't the worst company in the history of animation, it's not even the worst that makes frequent theatrical releases, but its influence that they've had in the industry itself is awful because what they do is extremely difficult to pull off, but is still successful at the same time, so clearly they know what they're doing. With their first film, Despicable Me, in 2010, which they realized that the direction that they intentionally took was extremely profitable, so the films are completely designed to be as profitable as possible, and they are often criticized for being lazy, but I wouldn't refer to them as a lazy company. Sure, yes, their films are about on par with people that do not give a shit about what they're making, but they intentionally design their films to be as profitable as possible, which ultimately affects the film's quality. Animation is expensive, and they will do anything to reduce the cost, even if it boils down to tiny details, and they design everything to appeal to the largest demographic possible, just to increase the profit, even if they're doing a shit job of it. And they have this unique style of presentation. Doing anything that would actually challenge the audience would potentially limit the audience, and a limited audience means limited profit, and that's not something that they would want to do. So they're not necessarily lazy, but there is talent and work put in these movies that intentionally lowers the quality, because they specifically designed the films to be as profitable as possible, which ultimately affects it, which takes a lot of work. And I think everything that's wrong with the company is perfectly presented in their 2015 movie Minions, which we're talking about again. Yay.
But then one day, Liam did something I never expected.
Max! I love you, Max.
That's right, kids. Believe it or not, I was actually in this movie, Secret Life of the Pets 2, which is epic. Bottoms up. 1 is the best Illumination movie to date, and I think the entire strategy of making this movie is cost-effective. I would excuse, but considering how impactful this film was to the company and the entire industry, that's not a positive. And the success of this movie basically confirmed that their business strategies were extremely effective. This was not followed in their next movie, Hop, which is fucking awful, by the way, because it obviously used other tactics to be successful in that entire category. As for Despicable Me 1 itself, it's surprisingly an okay movie. Unlike every other Illumination movie, there's an actual idea behind it. Some jokes are good, some aren't. Some of the designs are fucking awful. Vector rivals the Grinch as the worst designed Illumination character to date. Don't be surprised when they bring him back in Despicable Me 4, 5, or 27, because he's a meme now, and of course, if there's memers in the audience, that can increase the audience, then can increase the profit, which these films are obviously designed to make. It's overall just an extremely forgettable movie. Not terrible or anything. Still the best Illumination movie, which is not saying a lot. Then they made Despicable Me 2, which is one of those movies like the Angry Birds movie 1 or 2, where the sheer amount of laziness is insane considering the success. But I would say Despicable Me 2 is on par with both of the Angry Birds movies. There is so much filler in this movie. The animation is a significant downgrade. The designs are awful, and this goes for Illumination in general, but I hate how overly large everyone is, especially their noses. And why is everyone always that skinny? Why is everyone like 14 feet tall in the universe? What are the fucking proportions? This is the tallest man to ever live. This is Gru. Oh no, wait, hang on. Drew and Lucy are taller than him. Like, and this isn't a stylistic decision. They're just doing that because it's cheaper. But by the time in the second installment of the franchise, they realized that nobody gave a fuck about Gru or his daughters or about anything else that was spawned from, you know, an actual idea from the first movie. But they still had to feature them in the movie because the Minions are in it. And realistically, those are the only parts in the movie that people cared about, because the Minions are not characters that are capable of telling a feature-length story. So out of the blue, we just get unfunny bullshit shenanigans. Then they made the Minions spin-off, which I'll get to in a second. But then this was followed with Despicable Bitch 3, which is slightly better than 2, I guess. The Minions are barely in it, but they're not with Gru, but they're by themselves because nobody gives a rat's ass about the actual characters anymore, and they made this movie for the money. Because Gru and his family are in the movie, and you know, those are actual characters. Not good ones necessarily, but they are still characters nonetheless. And since they know that nobody cares about these characters, why should they try? The villain is like this 80s pop culture reference enthusiast guy. He's memorable, I guess. He's not a good character, but at least they did something to stand out. I do like the idea of someone being so delusional that they are the character that they played on TV as a child. That's actually an interesting idea. And some of his gadgets are kind of cool. He's voiced by Trey Parker, one of the creators of South Park. So if you ever wondered how they somehow never made fun of the Minions in their entire decade that they've been a thing, this is why.
Perfect. No, but this villain, I mean, you played it so well. The voice is so great. How much fun was it playing this 80s villain?
It was fun. I didn't have to do much, you know, and I didn't really want to do a character just because Illumination stuff is so it's so visual and everything that I didn't want it to get too charactery with it. So it's really just kind of my voice, but heightened. So I didn't have to try too hard.
Anyway, in this movie, Gru has a brother, which was established never, and they have the exact same character model, but he has hair and he's wearing white. Wow, very original design, not lazy at all. Anyway, let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this franchise, the Minions movie. Yay. So we start out with a philosophical lesson about the history of the Minions, involving a narrator, which you would assume is like a character in the movie or something, but no, he's only a narrator because the Minions are characters that do not speak proper English. Instead of just, watching them do the things, we have the narrator explain what the Minions are going to do, and then they do it.
Bob was eager to go, but Kevin felt he was just not strong enough for the dangerous journey ahead.
But the narrator explains that the Minions have been around since the dawn of time, completely going against the lore of Despicable Me 1.
This is very bad. Time. Right now. I'm not kidding around. I mean it.
But we're not tired.
But who knows, maybe he made more of them. And are also born with clothes for some reason. Now, before this movie came out, I would assume that eventually they would have a scene without the Minions' goggles on, but a part of the design that's always bothered me is that their eyes stick out of their head, and if they take their goggles off where their eyes fall out, there's not a single shot in this entire franchise without their goggles on. I'm really curious. It's probably just a design flaw, but I've always wondered that since I was a kid. But we get to see the Minions act like idiots all throughout history, and they kill many people. So we get to see the Minions work with all the most evil leaders in history, like a dinosaur, a caveman, Dracula, Napoleon Bonaparte, okay, which they murdered, by the way. Considering all the people that they worked with, and considering all the shit that they've done, you figure this would be in the history books, and this would probably also be a documented species of animal. And by the time the first movie is set, which I assume is when it came out, there are probably millions of people all around the world that have had experience with them. And like, they finally go to jail in the third movie, which despite their public appearances and their background. But keep in mind, this is a kid's movie, so it's like the kid appropriate versions of the most evil people in history. Like, they go into an ice cave and build a civilization, which is just a huge waste of time, and then they go there during, which I assume is the French invasion of Russia, because Napoleon's there and it's in the snow, and then they leave in the 1960s, so you just wasted 156 years doing nothing. So if you do the math, they were probably in there for about 156 years, then they just did nothing. Like, in the time frame, most notably, both World War happened, and you're looking for an evil master, hello, Hitler and the Nazis, and many more.
C'est pas là. Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Yo, shit, Norma the North is in this movie?
Ah, ok. Tomato la pita de la poca. Mopa la triba. Findo le boss. Ok. Ok. La guetta, le big boss. Ah, le Bob.
Hang on, let's look at the script for this movie. I'll leave a link below if you're curious. Ha, Bob, stoppa, ha, oh, Bob, ha, ha, no. Profiterole, no, Stuart, oh, look at that one, whoa, peace, make love, not war, peace and love, booyah, 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 hey, ho, cherish me, booyah, 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 oh, banana, hey, taxi, hey, oh, hey, that is an actual quote from the script for this movie. Wow, just great dialogue. That won't get obnoxious for a full movie. Like, you could just tell it through silent visuals like Shaun the Sheep, TV show or the movie, or you could include subtitles, even though this movie is targeted at kids that obviously can't read yet. So we get introduced to our three main characters, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob. Bob is one character's trait is that he's weak and fat. Stuart is like a musician sometimes, and Kevin has no character trait. He's just there because the movie has to happen. So they either go from the North Pole or Russia, it's not consistent at all, like how'd you get there, to New York overnight in the 1960s, which would be very difficult to make a kids movie considering what happened in that time. The Incredibles did this for around the same time. That actually had a well-established settings, regardless of the quality. But they reference shit like protest, and it's like a kids-friendly version of it, which is kind of disrespectful. Then we get a montage, where you guessed it, unfunny bullshit shenanigans happen. And then they even get to find clothes on a line with overalls, because they just need to have the original designs of this movie. And keep in mind, they just stole human clothes on a clothesline, even though those clothes do not match human anatomy at all. Then they go in a mall, which is probably just a recolor of the one from Despicable Me 2. Hell, this whole New York setting was probably reused in The Secret Life of Pets. Then they, like, just hide in the mall, and then they watch a game show which has the same names as the characters, and they discover a secret channel because movie, and there's going to be a villain convention like Comic-Con, but even though that makes no sense. So then they leave New York City, making this entire fucking series of scenes pointless. Then they hitchhike, and there's a huge continuity error. Like, it takes 4 seconds to drop the lunchbox into the frame. How did you not notice that? Then they waste time with the villain family, and then we cut back to the other minions, who find a Yeti who dies later in the movie, making these entire scenes pointless. Then they go to Villain Con, which somehow goes unnoticed. Okay, I get it, like a secret meeting in the middle of nowhere, but like, how does this go unnoticed? There's obviously a ton of money set up to establish this. Comic-Con was a thing at the time this movie was set, but not like a modern day one. They decide that they want to work with Scarlet Overkill because the movie needs an antagonist. So then they get to work with her through unfunny bullshit shenanigans, and then she wants to steal the Queen of England's crown, and then they get super secret agent gadgets. Wait a second, spy gadgets in London? This kind of reminds me of Cars 2. Don't worry, we'll get to that eventually. Oh, and then this happens. You see, kids, this is what gay stripping looks like. And then they, like, fight a blind guy? Like, if you're disabled, why would they put you in charge of something that important? Then we get a stupid chase where Bob pulls the sword out of the stone and it becomes the fucking King of England. Like, okay, you're telling me that, again, nobody recognized these things from history, and they don't mistake Bob for another minion, which could very easily be responsible for other crimes. In fact, they literally just put the Queen of England's life at risk. Like, why would they do that? So then they just restructure the entire government in 5 minutes, and they have no inauguration or whatever, even though Scarlet has one later. And then they just forget the point of the movie, which proceeds into another montage. And then Scarlet comes back and then points a gun at the King of England. Like, why is there no security? Then we get another montage of them being tortured in a medieval dungeon with Scarlet's husband, who I didn't really bother to mention. He's not really that important to the story. So then they escape through a sewer, even though it's a medieval torture dungeon, and that's realistically before sewers were built. Then they steal a wreath from a funeral. Okay, that's fucking awful, but to be fair, they are criminals. Then there's a Beatles reference that makes absolutely no sense. Now, if you didn't get the reference, they're parodying the Abbey Road album cover, which right to left features John, Ringo, Paul, George in that order. But in this one, it's like John and then Paul 3 times, even though Paul's the one with no shoes. Like, he should be over here. Why is he over there? And then I get everyone else is wearing similar color palettes while John is just wearing white, but they're not all wearing the same color of clothes. And then even for a couple of seconds, we get to see what is either Ringo or George's faces for a couple frames, and considering when the album cover was shot and how they're dressed, like, that doesn't look like either of them at all. Keep in mind, this movie takes place in 68, and this is set in 69. Oh, the background looks nothing like the actual background. It's probably just a reused asset from a different perspective. But then they go to the church, and notice how it's, like, sunny outside, and then they accidentally fucking murder Scarlet Overkill, but oh, nope, she's alive, like a shitty fake-out death. And then we get another chase, and it's thunderstorming out, and I'm not aware of England's weather patterns, but there's no transition whatsoever.
Kevin, I know you're out there. You think you've gotten away? Well, what do we have here?
Hello.
Oh my goodness.
Stuart?
Which one shall I kill first? Little Bob? Stuart? Bob? Stuart? I will do it, Kevin. If you are not back here by dawn.
Yes, Kevin, great plan. Come over here so I can kill all 3 of you, even though I could very easily kill 2 of you right now. And then because climax has to happen, Kevin becomes giant, and then he fights a rocket ship lady. How do you not miss one? You're like the greatest supervillain in the world. And then Kevin eats a missile, and then we get a second fake out death, but then he's fine and small again because he ate a missile, which was never established at all. And then they get knighted for causing millions of dollars in property damage and potential relation to a ton of other crimes all around the world that realistically they committed years ago, probably on the country's territory as well, considering who they worked for. All happy, even though this is the worst possible outcome for them. They wanted to serve an evil master, and they get regarded as heroes by all of England, like, because movie Gru shows up, which I guess makes sense because the entire purpose of this movie was to either tell us about how they were created or how they started working for Gru, but that's about only in the last 5 minutes, which which completely screws up the timeline anyway. And for the Minions movie is fucking awful, both from a conceptual perspective and a storytelling perspective. The point is the movie that is to give the backstory of the Minions, so they go in that direction kinda, but then like Gru is only in it at the end, and then the second half is just shit happening, and then it just kind of forgets the point of the movie halfway through anyway. Like I said, Despicable Me 2 and the Angry Birds movies are both awful movies that could have been way worse considering what they're given, but I feel like this would be on par if those movies were as bad as they could have been, because in this one they obviously took every opportunity to be lazy. So much shit makes no sense, it's terrible, it's pointless, there are too many goddamn scenes of just nothing or bullshit montages. The backstory of the Minions could have just been one of the a billion shorts that they're in, or just like a segment at the beginning of a Despicable Me movie. So overall, yeah, this is really goddamn unnecessary, but though there's a sequel coming out, which I was gonna revisit this movie because the sequel's coming out, but it got delayed until summer of 2021 because of coronavirus. Did you really have to do it for a whole nother year? Look, I get it's not gonna make the original release date. So, Minions: The Rise of Gru just seems more of like a Despicable Me prequel, which the first movie, the point of it was trying to be, but this is an actual one. Of course, if they put Minions in the title, it's gonna make more money or something. Even though the story seems to be mainly focused on Gru, who, is an actual character that you can write, an actual plot with potential around. In fact, this whole movie seems like it's really about Gru despite the Minions title, so I have a strong feeling it's either gonna use a back-to-back structure with the Minions and Gru, like the Angry Birds movie 2 or Norm of the North motherfucking 3. Oh no, the Vicious 6. Wow, such an epic villain lineup. I thought the new heroes from Incredibles 2 designs were bad, but like, wow, what do these tell you about the characters? Fucking nothing. Oh, look at it, it's the worst version of the mime guy from Incredibles. Oh, look at it, it's a nun. Oh wow, that's hilarious. Get it? Nuns don't use fucking ninja stars. Like hippie girl, like what the fuck are these characters? We'll probably just end up killing all of them anyway, because they're not mentioned in any other films considering it's a prequel. Like yeah, overall it just looks complete shit. And I'll talk about it as soon as it comes out in digital. Who knows, maybe it'll get an early release, but realistically it's not because it's Illumination and money. And who knows, this corona shit could go on forever. It might be a while till this actual movie comes out, but as soon as it's out on digital, I will talk about it unless there's already on another episode by the time of its digital release. But don't worry, I'll get to this one because it looks like some good material. Haha, they're playing a Rolling Stones song and they're talking about Iraq. Now, Minions 3, they should just do the Adolf Hitler plot. That would be good. Or Despicable Me 4, they should ditch Gru again and they should fucking join ISIS. That would be epic. And yeah, that's the fucking Minions movie. Anyway, I'm thedrxhenry and I'm signing off.
Hey, what's wrong?
I hate boys.
Yeah, men are pretty stupid. They fall into the river in Lego City. Fuck men. I'm a feminist now. This is a feminist channel.